Welcome to It's All About the Questions, where learning to ask the right questions can help you achieve lifelong success. Now, here to help you ask all the right questions is award-winning author, international speaker, and business strategist, Laura Stewart.
Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone, and welcome to the show. Our episode of the month is happening right now, and I am so excited to be here with you all as always. We've got a jam-packed episode today, and I can't wait to have you actually meet in live stream in person. My guest of the show today, who's a friend and somebody who has helped me tremendously through a lot of the physical difficulties that I've dealt with over the last several years. And some of the questions that I started thinking about, because of course the show is called It's All About the Questions, right? Are injuries preventable? How do you recover if you can't skip work? How do you recover if your brain doesn't seem to want to work the way you want it to work? Are there things that you can actually do to help yourself heal, to recover faster, to recover better, not even faster, but to recover better? And what's the most important thing that you as an entrepreneur, small business owner, corporate employee, CEO, whatever you're doing in your life and in your business, what can you do when you're injured? So I decided I wanted to have somebody who holds a special place in my heart, Dr. Steve Ryland of Align Physical Therapy. He's the CEO and founder. It's a multi-location practice, physical therapy practice in Brevard County, Florida, but he has worked all over the country, heading up rehab hospitals, working with other hospitals, working with practices all around the country to help them help others so much better. He's worked with professional athletes. He has worked with people post-surgery, pre-surgery, and he's decided that it's okay to be on my show today, and I'm really excited about that. And I want to introduce you to a friend and somebody, as I said, who's really helped me make a difference with my ear injury and my brain injuries to help me get through it. And by the way, he's been through a lot of this stuff himself, which is what makes him an extra special physical therapist. So please welcome Dr. Steve Ryland to the show. Steve, welcome.
Thank you, Laura. That was very nice. I appreciate that.
It's always hard to listen to what people have to say about you, right?
Yeah, I know. That's awesome.
But I'm excited to have you here today because, you know, one of the things that people ask me so much, especially with the ear injury, with the sound-induced disequilibrium and all that other stuff, you know, like, how have I managed to get through it all? And I've also had back injuries and a lot of other things because I have some chronic illnesses that just make my joints terrible. And I'm like, well, my friend Steve really helped me when I went to his physical therapy. And they're like, but why? Is it brain? What is it? How did he help you? And I said, one of the things that Steve figured out was I was dealing with some traumatic brain injury, concussion stuff from past concussions, and helped me fit that through. So how do you talk about that when you're working with your patients, that it's not just the shoulder or the knee or the hip or the back? What's your approach, Steve?
Yeah, and you know, over 20 years ago, our profession decided to make the switch from a master's program to a doctorate program. So I don't even know that a lot of people across the United States or across the world for that matter know that most physical therapists now are doctors of physical therapy. So that we go through almost 8 years of training. And that's what I try to teach a lot of the young therapists is when you have a person that walks in your office, whether it's a knee injury, a shoulder injury, a back injury, you have to look at the whole body because what's affecting them physically is also affecting them mentally. So you just really have to just start from the beginning and just get a global picture of what's going on with that person. How is it affecting their life? How is it affecting, you know, interacting with others, their work, home life, et cetera. And that's where you start from. And once you start to get those patients open up to you, it's interesting how many patients say to me, why are you asking me what medications I take? I said, because that plays a huge part in what we're going to do today. And you'd be surprised how many physical therapists catch things because we're spending more time with you than perhaps your primary care doctor or perhaps your specialist, we're spending a lot more time going over things with you, looking at your chart, looking at your x-rays, looking at your MRIs, any special tests you may have, what medications you're taking. Tell me about your whole medical history. And it just starts to open up, and it's like putting pieces to a puzzle together. And that's what I really love about the profession of physical therapy. And we're still really underrated. Physical therapists just are still not getting enough credit. And that's why I'm working with Congress, Medicare, other payers to start to say, listen, we have this ability. Let us practice to the full extent of that ability.
And it's invaluable, the work that you're doing, and I hate how hard it has been for you guys. And you definitely do spend way more time with your patients than the doctors that have sent them your way. And in some states, somebody can self-elect to go into physical therapy. So when you're asking those questions from a patient of yours, are there some trends that you see amongst your average patients that you think of that may be avoidable or could more easily be corrected if they would just do a few things?
Yes. And usually what we see is, our day and age today, we're very sedentary. A lot of us, we're stuck behind our laptops. We're stuck in our work. We're stuck in our desk. We're sitting a lot. Even if you look at kids in school, they've taken out a lot of the playtime, et cetera. So we're starting to now realize that movement is the key. We have to keep moving. It's, Publix down here. It's one of the things I'll drive around Publix and I watch people driving their cars around and around and around until they get that parking space right in front. And I'm like, I used to do wellness talks and I would tell people, hey, little things you do during the course of the day, instead of waiting for the first parking spot at the grocery store, park out from the grocery store. If you have steps and stairs, use steps and stairs. Don't use the elevator. Little things like that. But movement is key. If you look at all chronic disease, diabetes is at an all-time high, not only in the United States, but across the world now. Diabetes is as an all-time high. Movement, walking. I tell people, just get up, simple. If you're sitting 30 to 45 minutes, just get up and walk 1 to 2 minutes. Just get up and do something. Just move. And your body loves that. Even me, my story is I was a patient before I was a physical therapist, and fear, people are just in fear. They injure themselves, no matter what it is. And they've never been through something like that, or they have, and it's something new and they're just trying to figure it out. But the first thing that pops into our mind is, oh my God, how am I going to live with this? Right. So
Right.
you have to handle that fear aspect of it, and then just get them to overcome that and let them know that it's going to be okay. And we're going to work our way through this. But the key is you have to keep moving, even with injury. We used to say bed rest. That's not the key anymore. The key is you got to get up and keep going. Just keep pushing.
Okay, so let's talk about that a little further because some people, you said keep pushing,
Mhm.
move, get up, not bed rest,
Mhm.
whatever. The fear.
Yep.
The fear is a huge thing. I know with me, I avoid going places because the noise
Yep.
could hit me and it could make me want to drop to my knees, which is not something I want to deal with. When my back started spasming the other day, just leaning down to change my garbage bag,
Mm.
the last thing I wanted to do was move because the spasm was so strong I
Right.
couldn't.
Yep.
Is there a moment when you should not push through?
There is a moment, but I'll give you a perfect example. This past weekend, my wife Tracy, we were in a car accident almost 4 years ago, and she woke up in the morning and was just in tears, like I knew something was wrong with her back. um, but I said to her, we're going to work through this. Let's go to the urgent care. We'll get you an x-ray, because knowing her back history, I knew there was something else going on, because she was never
Right.
in that amount of pain. But I still said, we have to get out of bed. We can't move. You can't just lay here all day. And we did. We were able to get her out of the chair. We were able to get her out of the bed, get her moving, get her situated, get her comfortable. But she looks back on it now and says, I'm really glad you made me do that. Now, I knew there was something else going in her back, and she did have what's called a pars defect. So it was a crack in the bone that was actually causing the pain. Because as physical therapists, we can usually tell, is it muscle pain, is it nerve pain, or is it bone pain? And if somebody has bone pain, I mean, you all know that for anybody who's ever broken a toe or broken a finger, bone pain is the worst. And I knew from the description of her pain, there was something else going on in her back. And she had what's called a pars defect, which is a hairline crack in the vertebral body. And so we were able to handle that, but still movement was the key. Now with somebody like you, we had to accommodate, right? Because the last thing I want you doing is getting in a car and triggering, because that's a dangerous situation. So that's what we have to do. We have to accommodate, look at the situation. Not two patients are ever the same, but that's how we evaluate it. We look at the global picture and we just say, okay, we can still get you moving, but we have to move in certain ways that aren't going to trigger and cause more harm to the patient at the time.
So when you're working with a physical therapist, one of the things it sounds like a patient should do is ask a question like, if I get into a pain cycle, what are things that you recommend I do to help me move? What's the safe way?
Correct.
Because I know that your staff where you are, they're going to tell you, like here's how you're going to get up if you're
Mhm.
dealing with a back injury
Yep.
or you've had knee surgery. But not we know that not every physical therapy location is the same.
Right.
So what are the questions that a new patient should ask if they have that fear? Because fear is something it's very difficult for people to express, especially to a medical practitioner,
Mhm.
which is the person they really should express it to,
Yep.
right? But
Well,
they feel ashamed.
right. And first and foremost, they have to feel comfortable with their physical therapist. I mean, I'm not going to beat around the bush. There's good physical therapists. There's not good. There's some people that are just going through the motions, just like there's good doctors and not so good doctors. And, I had a text from a patient this morning. She just had knee surgery and she's like, she sent me a video. She's like, listen to my knee. Is this normal? And I said, no, that's not normal. I said, that's your kneecap is not tracking properly. And she's like, well, how do I get in to see you? And I said, well, we'll work that out, but yeah, just get in to see me, because unfortunately she was just not getting good advice. And
Right.
it was, her knee was swelling and they were putting her through stuff, they were going through the motions, right? This is what you do. And that's why it's so critical. And I have to say 80% of physical therapists out there, they don't look at every patient as a, model. Here's the protocol for that. You have to look at
Right.
every patient. Everyone's different. And then you have to build your plan around what you find. Treat what you
Okay.
find.
So what do they ask? How do they, when they're evaluating a physical therapist, when they come in with an issue, what are some questions that patients should ask?
Well, first thing I say is, the doctor, again, most of our patients, 80% of our patients come from word of mouth referrals, right? If your doctor sends you to a physical therapist, the first thing you want to look at is, go to their webpage, look if they've got good Google reviews, or is that a good physical, ask questions, ask around, is that a good place to go? Because a lot of it, of course, I hate to say it, but it's dictated by insurance. Insurance these days pretty much
Yes.
dictates healthcare, which is horrible. That's the way our country has gone. But your medical practitioners that's probably a topic for another day.
But the person has already, they know they're coming to you,
Yeah.
right? Or whoever the person is in their area, because people listen from
Yeah.
all over the world on my
Yeah.
show.
Mhm.
What do they, I mean, I know for me, you know me, I ask a ton of questions when I walk in, but how do you decide once you're in there and you say, okay, I'm here for my back?
Mhm.
And your physical therapist says, well, I think it's probably related to your neck
Yeah.
or whatever. Or in this case, my chiropractor adjusted my arm and I bruised my my hand really
Yeah.
badly. But I'm always scared because people have 100% faith
Mhm.
in who they go to.
Yep.
And you've lived all of this. And you ask a lot of questions. You never take stuff on blind faith. So at what point do you know it's not working?
You have to be comfortable, and you should be able to know by the first visit or two. Are you comfortable with that therapist? Do you feel like that therapist is meeting your needs? And not every patient likes me, and I'm okay with that. If we don't, one of the first things I learned in medical school, and our professor, and he's still a good friend of mine today, Steve Janos, he said to me, I can teach you all the skills in the world, but I can't teach you how to connect to your patients. If you connect to your patients, you have a lease up on life. You're going to be way better than the person who has no personality that can't connect to their patients. And patients have felt this. Do you connect with your doctor? Do you connect with your surgeon? Do you connect with your physical therapist? It's all the same. And you'll know after the first visit, if you walk out of there and you feel like, hey, all my questions weren't answered, or hey, I just don't feel comfortable with that person, it's okay to say, I want to switch therapists, or I want to go to another facility. That's fine, because we have a choice today as to where we can go for our therapy. And my wife, when we first got married, she had a really bad neck injury. She went to the place where I was working, which was a hospital chain. She went for 2 visits, and she's like, Steve, this is a waste of time. And I said, well, if you're not comfortable, you're not going to get better. Just don't go. Right. And I was young. I was out of school. So I wasn't where I was today. I didn't have that experience. So you want to make sure your therapist has experience. You want to make sure you're going to a place that's, they're known for getting people better, et cetera. And you're going to do some research, is that therapy company good? You're going to look at, everybody has Google these days. Google reviews mean everything, right? People are
Right.
going to tell you the truth. Are they good? Are they not good? So you go to these chain clinics, unfortunately, you're just going to be another number. And that's the other thing too, is how many patients are they seeing because the way, again, insurance is dictating the way we treat our patients. A lot of these clinics are having to jam as many patients in as they can to get those numbers.
I have a friend who went to a physical therapy clinic and she spends 15 minutes there. That's
Mhm.
it. The entire treatment is 15 minutes. And they give her a whole bunch of stuff she has to do at home. And then she comes back in and they evaluate her where she is. It seems more of a you go, they tell you what to do, you go home and do it. They don't know if you are doing it optimally
Yep.
or not. They're just looking to see if you've gotten any further results. Now, I know people here know that I've had surgery on my hands, and I've gone to physical therapists that are hand specialists and so on. And you do stuff at home, but they also do a lot of stuff there to evaluate you. How important is the stuff you do after you leave the physical therapy session versus what you do while you're at the physical therapy session?
It's just as important, if not more important, because you're only going to be with us a few hours a week. The rest of the time, you're on your own. Now, with advances in technology, we use a program called remote therapeutic monitoring now, which I love. We started using it in January. Medicare and all the other insurance providers they did a study from 2020 to 2024, and they found out that patients that used remote therapeutic monitoring, there was a $38,000 downstream cost savings, meaning less x-rays, less MRIs, less narcotics, less surgeries, less hospitalizations, less falls. So we're using remote therapeutic monitoring, meaning I can sign you up with a HIPAA compliant app. You and I can communicate in real time, meaning if you have a question, you send me that question through the app. That question comes directly to my inbox. I check that 3 to 4 times a day, knowing that, lunchtime, after work, morning, I'll check those and I'll answer those questions. But what is really important is all the exercises I can send are in video format, so you can look and see exactly what you're supposed to be doing and how you're supposed to be doing it. If you have a question, you can then send us a question and the therapist can answer it real time. So there's been a lot of advances in that, but it's so important. And we know as physical therapists, when you come back, are you, are you doing your exercises or not? They used to do studies about this every year. 23% of patients were compliant with their home exercise programs. But, now with the advancement in technology and stuff, and that's actually why I started my new business, which is, every morning I'm sharing tips, information. I want people, if I can touch people within those 4 walls, I decided I want to get outside of those 4 walls, and knowing my story and what I went through, I don't want anybody to have to endure that if possible, if we can help prevent that.
And those videos that you're doing, the short videos, they are on Facebook. Are they on YouTube as well, in your own YouTube
Yes.
channel?
Yep.
Okay.
So I
And
do
we'll
two.
provide links to all of that after the show, everybody, so you can find them. I have to say that I've been following a number of them since you started doing them. And I was doing dishes in my sink yesterday, and I remembered the first washing dishes sink one you did, which
Yeah.
was pulling your glutes. Everybody, that's your butt, those muscles. And then put one, like open your cabinet door and put a foot in there. And it was amazing the difference, the relief in my lower back pain and how much longer I was actually able to do it. Now the shoulder pain and all of that other stuff pretty much stopped just following that. Although
Yeah.
my favorite, and everybody really needs to go find Steve on Facebook, Steve Ryland, and watch the one where he washes Patrick, his senior physical therapist's head, as an example of washing dishes. Patrick is bald, by the way, and Patrick's laughter is absolutely contagious. But the look on your face, Steve, while you were doing it was priceless. So
We have fun. We have to. We have to keep it light. So
yeah, and you do.
yeah.
You do. Okay, so you're doing daily videos to show people how important it is to do different things at home, so if they don't have access to a physical therapist, they can do things. We
Yep.
see a ton of videos on all the social platforms of not physical therapists, but personal trainers, average people doing exercises. Some of them I look at and go, okay, that's definitely an advanced level thing, and I'm not really sure that that's really safe. How does somebody evaluate some of the stuff that they're seeing out there from your lens as a physical therapist and somebody who survived some pretty horrific physical injuries as well?
Yeah, it keeps us in business, let me put it that way. So nothing against personal trainers. I've used personal trainers. I'm friends with personal trainers. I work with personal trainers on every level. But you have to be careful when you start an exercise program. If it hurts while you're doing it, now when I mean hurt is muscle soreness is one thing, but if you're doing it and you're like, my shoulder's pinching while I'm doing this and it really hurts and it hurts after I'm doing it for 3 hours, that's a bad sign. You probably shouldn't be doing that exercise. But trainers are paid to make people look good, and that's what they'll do. And they'll put, again, nothing against CrossFit, but that's a big referral source for us because people go in there and they go into these CrossFit classes and they come out and maybe they tore their meniscus or maybe they ripped their rotator cuff and tore their supraspinatus, and then they end up in our office. So I always tell people, before beginning an exercise program, go in, see a physical therapist, talk to your doctor, get good education on, should I be doing this? Should I not be doing this? And then, we'll get you on the path to doing the right things. And, because everything's out there now. It's, Dr. Google. Everybody goes in Google and hey,
True.
I just had a patient yesterday. He's like, I was having vertigo and I went in and did this exercise I saw in there, and it's called the Foster's maneuver. And he goes, oh my God, it made me 100 times worse. And I'm like, yep, that's what happens. People want a quick fix. They go in, they pull up a video, they try to do it. And, the best thing to do is get medical attention or get the advice of somebody professional who's been doing it for a long time to get doing it right.
Yeah. I started doing Pilates because when I injured my back, when I tore L5S1, the physical therapist I was using at the time in Vero Beach said, one of the best things we can do for you right now is Pilates. And she had a Pilates person on staff that she would send people to at various stages of rehab.
Yep.
And I kept up with her, and it was amazing the difference. She helped me get through the fear of like moving in certain ways because she supported me in things. And that's one of the things I feel physical therapists, and especially your team, is really exceptional at, which is that fear that I can't move that way because the pain will trigger.
Yep.
What are some things that you recommend to people if they're home, they don't have access to a physical therapist, and they know I have to reach that item, but I'm going to be in pain? What are some techniques, tips, whatever you want to call them, that have helped you work through some of that pain? Because like you talked about Tracy's, right?
Yep.
but you were there with her
Mhm.
and you know what you're doing.
Right, right.
But to somebody that's alone, what are some things that they can start to work on to maybe help them? My last episode with Carl Palachuk, we talked about nano steps
Mhm.
to making forward progress with your business or in areas of life. What are some nano steps to start breaking through fear with your physical body?
Yeah, fear is the biggest thing we have to overcome with people, and the first thing I tell them is pain does not equal damage, right?
Okay.
Pain is our body's way of telling us something's not right, but also pain does not equal more damage, meaning if you're moving and you're doing it. Now, if you're doing, let's say you're out pulling a tree stump and you pull your back, and next thing you know, or you're lifting 400 pounds squatting in the gym like I did at age 23 to blow out my back, which changed my trajectory in life, that's one thing. But if you're just trying to get out of a chair or you're trying to reach something in the cabinet and you're experiencing pain, it doesn't mean you're causing more damage. So first of all, we have to get them over that fear. And, people have to still live their lives. They still have to do things. So I just tell them, listen, if there's ways you can accommodate, like standing at the kitchen sink, perfect example. Your back starts freezing up on you. Watch your posture, watch your bottom mechanics, just little minor changes, putting your foot up on the kitchen cabinet, or instead of getting up on that, if you have to get something out of the cabinet, you got to get up on that step stool and you don't feel comfortable doing it, don't do it. Wait till somebody's there to help you. But that's the thing, is you just have to try to figure out, what can I do to accommodate at that time? And it all comes back to posture and body mechanics, bending at the knees. Your knees will last a lot longer than your back. One of the things, I posted a video yesterday about, I get into big debates with yoga instructors about bending over and touching your toes first thing in the morning and stretching out your back. Like, go ahead and do that 365 days a year. And I guarantee you at some point you're going to be in my office getting some type of therapy on your back. It's simple things like that, hinging at the hips instead of bending at the back, or doing that differently. And that's the things you got to learn, is you just got to learn that you can do tasks differently without causing long-term damage over time.
You're a big proponent of squatting
Mhm.
as something that can save you as you age. Why
Yeah.
is that? And by the way, I am now doing way more squats when I go to take stuff out of my dishwasher
Yeah.
and standing watching TV behind my couch. I have my hands kind of on the back of the couch. So I'm doing more of that now. But why
Yeah.
is that something that you are a big proponent of?
Because your knees are going to last way longer than your back will. So we use our backs as a hinge joint. And unfortunately, our spines were meant as a protective mechanism for our spinal cord. We use it as a hinge joint. I can take 10 people off the street right now. I think I posted a statistic the other day. Like 87% of people over the age of 80, if we do an x-ray and an MRI of their back, they have significant spinal degeneration, but that doesn't mean that they have pain, right? But that spinal degeneration led to where they are over time. And usually when it gets to a point where it starts to be painful, usually the disc is hitting the nerve. That's when they end up in my office. But what I try to tell them is, let's not get to that point, right? Your knees will last longer than your back. We use our back. We're constantly twisting. We're forward bending. We're reaching. We're pushing. And I always tell people, bend at the knees, get down, kneel on a knee, do something differently than twisting and rotating, because that's what really, and we spend billions of dollars a year fixing back pain. And that's why there's pain management doctors popping up everywhere, because people are just
Yeah.
aching, their backs are hurting. And, I wish I knew at 23 what I know now, because that would have definitely saved me from a lot of what I went through with my pain and having to live my life the way I did.
And you weren't originally planning on being a physical therapist. I mean,
No,
we've talked, you were into meteorology and then you got injured and decided a career path change. I want to talk about that actually. I know it's a little bit of an aside from everything, but a lot of my listeners are in the middle of career changes, life changes, and they go, "No, I can't. I set myself on this path. This is the only path I can take." You've had a lot of asides in your path. You've gone in a lot of different directions over the years. How, why, what were some of the things you were telling yourself, asking yourself, or asking of others to help you make those choices?
Yeah. I mean, I had been accepted to law school. I was convinced that I wanted to be a corporate attorney. I had taken all the languages, I had taken all the economics, and I was going to be I wanted to do international business law. And 2 months before I headed off to law school is when I was in the gym. I used to work my college schedule around my gym schedule.
Interesting.
That's how much I was into bodybuilding, weightlifting, et cetera. And that one fateful day where I just decided I was going to get one more repetition and I blew my back out. And that was, there was no way in possible way I was going to be able to sit in class and study and focus. And what's interesting about that is I went to my doctor, we had all the tests, we did everything. I was going to every medical professional except physical therapy. That was never recommended to me.
Really?
Physical therapy wasn't even an option until a year later, after postponing going to law school. I was able to push it a year. And I remember going back to my doctor and I said, nothing's working. I was, again, nothing against chiropractor, but I was going to a chiropractor 3.
Oh, I lost you for a moment there, Steve. Hopefully he will be right back. All right, while we're waiting for Steve to come back, this is one of the joys of tech. If you have any questions and you're watching this live, and I know we have several live watchers right now, please feel free to post a comment or a question that you may have for Steve or for me in the whatever chat you're watching, whether it's on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and we will see it. And we'll reply to you, and hopefully Steve will be back soon. Anyway.
Right there. Can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you. You're back.
Yeah, something. Hold on. Now my camera's gone. Hold on.
Nope, I can see you on the
Can you
camera.
see me? All right. So I'll just leave my
I
phone.
can see you.
Yeah. So went to the surgeon. The surgeon was like, "You're so weak." I had foot drop. I had a condition called foot drop, and where my nerves were so compressed on my right side that he was like, "I don't even want to operate on you now. You need surgery, but let's hold off. Let's get you into physical therapy." And I went to a physical therapist for 2 months. And that was when the light bulb went off. And I said, wow, this is something I could see myself doing. And I didn't have any of my prerequisites. So I had to go back to school, get all my sciences, get all my maths and all that stuff. And I just knew it was right, because when people were telling me, you're going into a profession back in the 1990s, early 90s, it was a 2% chance of getting into PT school. That's how popular it was at the time. And I knew when I applied to about 10 different schools. I got accepted. That's when I knew this is what was meant to be. And I'm glad I did it.
But you've also, let's see, you had built 5 practices. You had 5 locations initially. Then you sold, got out of that, and you went to work in more corporate
Yeah.
physical therapy versus an entrepreneurial role like you were. Then you left that and you're restarting. What made you make those different detours or charting different courses?
Life happens. And I think what really happened was, and this, you deal with a lot of different businesses. There were some people, as you get bigger, as you get more popular, as you become the bullseye, right? And people start coming into your career path, and people start, hey, I want to be a part of what he has, because he's doing it right. He's so successful. And good friend called me up and he's like, hey, I want to introduce you to these guys in California. They're building a software system, right? So we decided to beta test it, which we did. And at the time, there was a lot of changes going on in healthcare. That was in the 2013, 2015 time frame. And there were a lot of changes to healthcare going on. And I think I had just gotten burned out. And, it was becoming harder and harder for individual small practices to continue going on. There was a lot of merging going on. So what we decided to do, there was about 70 clinics across the United States, and they decided to do a managed service contract. And the attorney who was working on that project at the time, he was a marathon triathlon guy, set Guinness Book of World Records and stuff. He had hurt himself.
Wow.
Yeah. So he had gotten this group of physical therapists together because, like we talked about earlier, he went to a physical therapist. He was like, this is a joke. He was having coffee with a friend one day and they said, hey, why don't you go try this guy over at University of Southern California? He's a really good physical therapist. So when he went to Joe at University of South Carolina, he's like, why is there, or Southern California, he's like, why is there such a big difference between physical therapy clinic A and B? And that's when he decided, if we create this software system, we can make good therapists better and we can make not so good therapists better as well. And that's where we merged together. And then from there, it all sounded good on paper. And then,
Right.
as we know, it kind of fell apart. And that's why I went after that. I kind of walked away from physical therapy for a while. I just kind of had this bad taste in my mouth. So I said, friend of mine called me up. He was working a stem cell company down in the Bahamas, and they wanted me to be their quality director. And it was great. I loved it. I loved doing that. But we got hit by back-to-back hurricanes. We lost our infrastructure. We all got furloughed, and then I went to work for hospital systems, corporate America. I just wanted to try different things. But my calling and my passion had always been in private practice, and that's why I'm back today. 2022.
Are there any big learnings from all of those different, like, is there something that you took away from each of those different paths that have helped you be more resilient or compassionate or enabled you to help others
Yeah.
because of you having done those?
Yep.
What is that?
Yeah, and I look back on it, I had a multi-million dollar company taken out from under me, my feet just wiped out from under me. It seemed like holy moly. But I look back on it and I'm like, what a learning curve, right? I still landed on my 2 feet. I still am good at what I do. And that's the key is, if you're honest to yourself and if you're honest to what you do and you keep doing the things that got you there and made you successful, it's like, it's not rocket science. It's do the things that are right, do the things that that and just try to make the right decisions. I think it was Steve Jobs who said, I make 100 decisions a day, 99 of them are incorrect, but I still make the decisions and I keep moving forward. I mean, if you look at most successful people, at some point they've fallen flat on their face, right? And they failed, but it's the getting back up and getting back and putting your feet on the ground in the morning and just keep moving forward. And then just, most successful people I know, they're solving problems and they're doing it the right way. And that, in my opinion, if you keep doing things, I mean, look at me. Things, who would have thought 10 years later in the same community, opening another physical therapy clinic, there's 10 times more competition now. We're still seen as one of the best physical therapy clinics in Brevard County, right?
Well deserved.
Because we
From
do.
my biased personal
Right.
opinion.
Right. Because we don't allow the system to play us. We play the system and we maneuver the system the way, I'm going to do the things. I'm still going to treat my patients right. I'm not going to give up my morals and my ethics. I'm still going to do what's right. Am I making as much money as I was before? No. Am I happy? Yes. And that's the key. I'm serving a purpose. I'm helping people. And I'm always, complacency, I think, is very dangerous. And I think at a point I became complacent with how things were going. And I think you always have to be looking. You always have to be with that entrepreneur hat on. You got to be looking for opportunities, but you also have to make wise decisions. And if it felt like the decision now to expand outside of the four walls, if I can share this with more people, I'm going to be honest with you. Am I going to make money off it? Of course. Yes. That's the reason I'm doing it. But I also, first and foremost, I have all this knowledge bottled up in my head that I want to share with as many people as I can. And if I can get paid for that service and somebody buys my exercise program and it helps them, I've already had people that have purchased my program that have said, oh my God, I've been doing it for 2 weeks and I'm feeling, 50% better already, right? Because it's the things that I do every day. It's the things that I know are correct and I know what's going to help. And then, you kind of go from there and then you put the pieces together. But, that's what I learned is just continue to be true to yourself, continue to be true to your product. And if you have a good product, people are going to continue to want that product.
As Bob Berg would say, lead with value.
Hmm.
Now,
Yeah.
doing all the different videos and the exercise program that you're working to help people with, it's got to be so hard because from being a doctor of physical therapy, I know one of the first things that you lead with is I need to understand what's going on in your unique body versus you've come in with a back injury or a neck injury or balance and vertigo injuries. There's that holistic thing. So when you're helping somebody in this other work that you're doing, not knowing everything that's going on with them, how do you start creating programs for people that you really don't know?
Right.
You know how to deal with the physical body, but you don't know their unique situation, which is something aligned physical therapy is all about. So can you talk to that a bit?
Yeah, I start with the basics. Again, it's the things that I know to be tried and true with me. One of the first things I do in my program is I kind of go over the different back injuries. There's different back injuries, and your MRI is not your life sentence. A lot of people look at their MRI and they're like, "Oh my God, this is horrible." And I try to tell them, "No, don't pay attention to that. Just kind of." So you are right. There is a component. There is still that, there is a big virtual physical therapy company out right there right now, right? I think they just got valued at like $8 billion, and they started this.
Wow.
Yeah, it's insane. Um, but a lot of physical therapists are looking at it, and I think it's going to be a fad because I think what's going to happen is it's way valued right now because it's exploding. Because in today's market, people want to be better fast, right? Um, so you can do virtual physical therapy, but there's still that hands-on component. So most of the stuff that I'm sharing is baby steps. That's step number one to getting up, getting moving. But there's still that second component where, okay, once you do this and you're feeling better now, and I usually end my videos with that, or I put a disclaimer in there, just, please make sure you still go get evaluated by a physical therapist or go see your doctor or something like that before, but that's basically what I'm doing now is here's the baby steps. Here's the basic things to do. Here's how to get out of chair correctly. Here's 3 morning stretches that I do every day that make me feel better because I'm stiff as a board. It's things like that, just little baby steps. And then from there, will I build more programs to advance? Yes. Will I do probably some more one-on-one? Yes, I'll do some stuff like that with some virtual, but right now I'm going with the basics.
Well, do you think you'll get to a point where you'll do more of the virtual? I mean, you barely have time nowadays.
Mhm.
You're about to open another location, you're trying to hire more physical therapists. I know during COVID, a lot of like Pilates instructors, Yoga by Adriene, all of that, they exploded. And Yoga by Adriene is still a massive platform. And my Pilates instructor had people who couldn't make it in or it wasn't safe for them to come in because of immune system challenges.
Right.
You could attend a class remotely. Is that something that you think beyond this $8 billion valuation company that you could be doing? Because you're going to explode with these videos and these other things you're doing, but one-on-one is also a big part of what you do. How do you work that in? Have you thought about that, or
Yeah.
you just still want to do local?
It's going to be a balance. I'll still do the local and I'll still do the virtual. Really what I'm trying to do right now is healthcare is really in shambles right now. And I think everybody can agree with that. Hospital
Yeah.
systems, doctors, there's a massive primary care shortage in our healthcare environment right now. And so I still think there's going to be a component where, virtual is going to be the way to go. We're starting to see that more with, even insurance companies right now. They're trying to push the virtual visit. I'm with Blue Cross and Blue Shield, and I have free access to virtual care wherever I want. I just got to hit a button in an app, right? So I think that's going to be a new part of the medical system. So yes, that's going to play a role, but I still want to have the brick and mortar where people can come to us because I think people are still going to want that hands-on personal experience from a physical therapist that's going to, so I don't think we're going to be replaced by AI. Everybody's saying, "Oh, physical therapy is going to be replaced by AI." I don't think that's going to happen. I just, virtual is going to be a pathway, and some people will like it because it's the only, especially in rural areas. There's a shortage of physical therapists. In rural areas, people are suffering, so virtual is the only option they have right now.
How can you do virtual with physical therapy when so much, well, not so much, but a good portion of what you all do requires you stretching out muscles or almost like a massage, a shiatsu. You do dry needling sometimes, different things that you can't do those virtually at this point in time. Maybe at some point in time, you get into a machine and,
Yeah, who knows?
that'll happen. But
And
how do you do that?
and that's why I don't think we're going to get replaced, because there's still
Okay.
that patient that requires the hands-on. There's that patient that needs the dry needling. There's the patient that needs that soft tissue mobilization, and that's going to get them better faster. And that's why it's going to be a mix. It's going to be a mix of in visit, but I think the way it's going to go is there's going to be, instead of coming 3 times a week to physical therapy, you come 1 time a week to physical therapy, and then the insurance companies again are dictating care right now. I'm hoping that's going to change, but they're going to want you to do more on your own, and people are going to be held accountable in the new system.
Okay. All right. I want to take a slightly different detour with the conversation we're coming up in the last few minutes of the show. You've worked and grown your business while dealing with the results of a pretty horrific car accident where you injured your back. You've talked about how you had surgery on your back. You were dealing with concussion symptoms. What would you advise to business owners that are trying to work through injuries? There's a lot of people, as we know, you were growing your business and open new locations while dealing with it. And you've said that, maybe I should have gone slower, but I wanted to build up on the momentum, right? But you had these pretty serious injuries. Would you have done anything differently? What would you advise to perhaps solopreneurs or people that are growing their business, that when you're injured, ignore these symptoms, or not ignore them, but maybe don't take them so heavily, but these other ones maybe think twice about, because it's just going to take longer to get better?
Yeah, I mean, I had, right after that car, I had just opened my brick and mortar clinics again. It was like literally, I think it was less than 2 months when we were in that accident. And I really didn't have a choice at the time. I was the only therapist. It was either me or nothing else. Did it push me to scale faster? Yes. I really had to find physical therapists that could come in and that could kind of take over the load and stuff like that. But I just thank God I was in that profession, because I knew what to do to try to manage the pain and get through the pain. But there were days where I would just come home and I was completely mentally and physically exhausted, but I just had to keep going and keep moving. And again, thank goodness medicine is a team approach, right? So I had good friends that were doctors that were helping me get to where I needed to be. Sometimes I was controlling it with anti-inflammatory medicines and, meloxicam, whatever I needed to take to kind of get through the day and what would get me through the day. But, I wouldn't recommend it for the faint of heart because it's like, yeah. And kudos to my wife, Tracy, because she had to put up with that whole mess. And the fact that she was in the car with me when we had the accident. And,
Yeah.
we were
Tracy's
both,
amazing.
yeah, we were both dealing with it. So, you find out who your friends are, right? So, she took good care of me. She helped me through that mentally and physically. So she was a godsend. So that's the other thing too, is having a support system around you that can work with you and help you. And that's vitally important as well. But yeah, go ahead.
No, you keep going.
No, it was, yeah. So, I wouldn't recommend people doing what I did, but I didn't have the choice. If I stopped treating at the time, basically my business I might as well just shut the door. So I just had to do what I had to do.
So it sounds like you're recommending that if you're trying to grow your business, there's nobody else that can do it. You can't afford to let it close down. Get a support team around you.
Yes. Phase one.
Doctor.
Okay. Have you ever heard of phase one? And phase one is where you're in the grunt, right? You're fully hands-on. It's a battle. You're getting things in place, you're setting things up. And then phase two is where you get I always say the key to my business was surrounding myself with people that were either smarter than me or harder work ethic. You surround yourself with good people and good things happen, right? So, I immediately started looking at, who can I trust, and I reached out to some of those contacts that I had in the past that had worked with me that wanted to come back. Patrick, perfect example. Patrick was like, yeah, I'd love to come back and build what you're building. And, he joined the team. Danny, who was working with me at a previous company, he came over and joined the team. So, I was able to reach out and use my contacts and get those people to come over. And, they saw the vision, they saw the mission, and, they've been in the trenches with me and now I've got that support team and I can kind of sit back, and that's what allows me to do these podcasts and run the business like the business is to be run rather than always putting my hands on the patients.
That's a great lesson for everybody to know. A lot of times you don't even realize that you have a support system that's around you. I remember crying on the floor of my office after I fired my engineering staff when I had my tech company and going, now what am I going to do? I got like massive installs about to happen. And after the cry, I picked myself up and went through my phone list, my Rolodex, whatever you want to call it. And I called other companies that I knew. And one guy said, forward your phones to our internal line and we'll answer it, Guardian Angel Computer Services. And we'll just handle that right now.
Yep.
I knew some other guys I've worked with in the past that were contractors, consultants. They had their own single man businesses. They flew in and helped me do all the implementations that I needed to do. No questions asked. Lori, you need help? We're there. So it sounds like you had that great group. So pick yourself up off the floor after that moment of total vulnerability.
Yeah. You just got to assess the situation, figure out what needs to be done, and then do it, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Now, dealing with brain injuries, because I happen to have a client that I've worked with in the past that had a brain injury and they needed to keep their business going, but they didn't know how to trust their brain. You deal a lot with post-concussion syndrome.
Yep.
And entrepreneurs have a tendency to, even if you don't have concussion syndrome, you've got so much going on in your mind. How do you suggest that people, entrepreneurs, or, just even somebody working at home or living at home with families, are there things that if you have a concussion, you want to make sure people remember that they always do or don't do?
Yeah. One thing was I journaled. I wrote things down, and because my brain wasn't always working the way I wanted it to, so I journaled. I would write things down. I would keep a system in place. You only have so many attention points in the day, and when you have a concussion, that's even less, right? So things like just laying my clothes out the night before and knowing what I was going to wear, simplifying things. That's what I did the most, is simplifying, and then bouncing ideas off people. Is this a good decision? And then you have to trust your intuition, because if everybody was you, everybody would be doing what you're doing, right? So you have to at some point understand your intuition and know what's right. But I would still, Amy, who's one of my executives, I would bounce ideas off her, and she would say, Steve, you're not in your right mind today.
But she says that even without,
Right. Let's
stuff.
think about that a little bit more, right? Because there's that emotional, the things that go along with a concussion is there's just these anger bursts and these emotional outbursts and these frustration points. And I always tell people, learn what phase you're in, because if you're in that phase, don't make business. It's like they say when you just had surgery and you're on pain medication, don't make business decisions, right? So leave the more important decisions for the days when you're more cognizant.
Okay, that's really great advice. Any last thoughts you'd like to leave my listeners with around anything we've talked about today or have not talked about?
We talk about a lot about physical therapy and me, but I think right now, I like to tell young therapists there's a massive shortage in the healthcare industry right now. I think we're in the big reset. There's going to be a big reset in healthcare, right? people are starting to wake up. I think people are getting more preventative. I think physical therapy in the future is going to be massive. Utah just passed primary care status for physical therapists in Utah for musculoskeletal and neurological conditions. I think we're going to see that expand across the United States. In fact, I'm working with the state of Florida right now to be the second state to allow that. And meaning, and I don't know if anybody knows this, but in the Army, physical therapists actually can prescribe medicines. They, except for narcotics, they can prescribe anti-inflammatories, antibiotics, et cetera. And in the Army, they've been doing it for 25 years. Physical therapists are the first front line if you have a musculoskeletal or a neurological condition. And I think we're going to start seeing that expanding because it's faster access to quality care that's going to really drive the healthcare market rather than, and I tell people 80% of MRIs are not necessary. You don't need an MRI to start. A lot of people, it used to be 5 years ago, well, how can I start physical therapy? You don't even have my MRI yet. I don't need it. By the time you walk out of my office, I'm going to tell you what the MRI is going to say. Right. So that's what I'm telling people, look more into physical therapy, look more into preventative medicine, watch what you eat, stay active, keep moving. And then just, your body will do what it's supposed to do if you treat it the way you're supposed to treat it.
Right. And I was going to close on that, but that led me to another question. There's so much out there about all these new peptides and shots and, function health and whole body MRIs and take this supplement, take that supplement. No, you have to do this. What do you say? What do you do for yourself to help you look at all those different things? Because there's somebody new every single day telling you this shot, that shot, GLP-1s, no GLP-1s.
Yeah.
What do you say to yourself to help you evaluate that? Or I'm sure your patients are all asking you.
Oh yeah, I get asked about peptides every day. I say there's still not enough evidence out there that show peptides. I like to do a lot of research, so I look at the research. And me personally, I haven't tried peptides. Am I a big stem cell advocate? Absolutely. I think stem cell therapy is going to be the wave of the future. I think we're going to be treating way more diseases with stem cells. And I think, the pharmaceutical company the pharmaceutical industry has been put on notice, right? We're treating symptoms, not the disease itself. And I think we have the ability to treat the disease itself. So that's why you're seeing peptides popping up. You're seeing stem cells. You're seeing all these things that we've known for years that have been beneficial. But for me, it's still, the jury's still out. So you have to be very careful. You have to look at it because everybody's trying to sell you the next greatest, nutritional item, et cetera. Look at the ingredients, what's in it. Has it been known to be helpful, et cetera? Then yes, try it. And I always say, try it for a month. If it helps you, stay on it. If not, you're probably, wasting your money.
Yeah. And always compare anything new you're adding to other drugs to make sure there's no crazy interactions.
Yes, because I see it all the time. People will start taking supplements and they interact with the medications that they're currently on, which can be very dangerous.
I had a friend start having seizures because a supplement interfered with his anti-seizure medication.
Yep.
It's really terrible. Well, I want to thank you so much for being with me, Steve. I know we've been talking about doing this for a while, and I'm glad we finally got to do it. We had our little tech blip in the middle, but that's okay. Life happens. That's what happens when you do stuff live, as I do on social. You've been invaluable and to me personally. So I want to thank you for that while we're on the show. And I've been thinking about calling up and getting an appointment with you to double check a few things that are going a little wonky again. But thank you so much. And I'm sorry we did not get to see your other CEO, the four-legged Iva, today.
Yeah.
But anybody who has a chance to go up to Align Physical Therapy in Brevard at the Indian Harbor Beach location may see a four-legged furry miniature. What kind of dog is she again?
She's a doodle.
A doodle, right?
Yeah.
A miniature doodle.
Little mini doodle. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Pure love, smart. She's our chief emotional officer, our CEO.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gosh, I just love that. I finally met her the other day and she's awesome, as is your entire staff. They make everybody feel like really welcome at all the locations. So I'm going to say, while Steve is on the air here, if anybody is listening to this who is a physical therapist, physical therapist and may want to relocate to Florida, Steve has a new location opening up. And I'm going to guess it's not your last one, right, Steve?
Not on that one. Nope. Okay. We're already thinking about the next one.
All right, cool. Always thinking about the next step.
Mhm.
Don't get too complacent, do you, Steve? Well, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Such a joy. All right, we'll talk soon.
Okay. Thanks.
All right, everybody. That was just a little bit of physical therapy, business, growing, how to deal when you're having a lot of pain, or questions to ask when you're in pain. Like, do you recommend a physical therapist to your doctor instead of just a pain medicine? How to work past fear. These are just a few of the things that we covered today. Make sure that you read the post that goes along with this video, or the audio on any podcast platforms. I will have the links to some of the stuff that Steve has out there, his free resources to help you with the baby steps to get moving again, to work past some of your fear with movement. And most of all, remember, the right questions can change your life. So what are you asking today? Have a great day, everyone.
You've been listening to It's All About the Questions, starring Laura Stewart. Connect with Laura at it'sallaboutthequestions.com and download a free workbook that will help you ask better questions starting today.